day 6, and we only have 7 and 8 as full days remaining. And so far, not a single sign of a polar bear. I spoke to someone coming off one of the other ships in Longyearbyen before we departed, and they said they saw 9 polar bears. 9 polar bears on their cruise. And us, well, zero polar bears. Of course, we've had an incredibly challenging journey. We've had weather, wind, waves. We've been unable to move into the very, very far pack ice. All that said, we should still be able to find a bear here in the fjords, which we are now cruising, and we are not giving up. All we want is one tiny little polar bear. Been on the hunt for a week. We've had every challenge available to man. We've seen no bears, but they've just been sighted on the horizon, and the excitement on the ship is absolutely palatable. Finally, we have polar bears, and it's not just like a little bit finally, it's like really finally. We're heading home in like, I guess 36 hours or something, like the journey is over. This expedition has been one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And now, over there on the horizon, we got it. Finally, we got it. We got the freaking polar bear. And the light right now is epic, so I'm gonna stop talking and start shooting. But don't you feel like the desire to get closer and to really see the details of the wildlife and capture like emotions in their eyes? Don't you feel like, because all your guests that come here, they got big ass lenses, and they really want to be like up close, like they want to have a polar bear there, basically.
Of course. No, I now understand that people want this, you know, but
it doesn't impact or influence you at all.
That's interesting. Because to me, it's not about how many hair in the nostrils of a polar bear you can see, but it's more about the I don't know, the context around it, you know.
I'm in the future, thinking about how to end this freaking video, because as the polar bears emerged on the horizon, all my thoughts of finishing a video, they were also finished. I'm a photographer, not necessarily a videographer. I will always prioritize my shooting first. I will always prioritize my experience first. I didn't finish my video, but I will do so now. Not by giving you more of that story from that day, but by showing you the results instead. Or perhaps by showing you the lack of results, because that's actually what we're talking about. Sometimes on expedition, you think everything will go right, but in the end it doesn't. This expedition was such an experience. We had several technical and human resource challenges when we were on this expedition. Things that had absolutely nothing to do with terra photography expeditions and the way we had set up the journey. I'm not going to go into any details about this because I don't think it's important for this story. That said, let's have a look at some of my images. By the way, I'm sitting here in Svalbard in a hotel room. It's a month later. I'm starting my May expedition literally tomorrow. So I'm just about to go out on the ocean again. But I'm still not emotionally done with my April expedition. I still have
the polar bears to discuss. And I really want to get this off my chest before I emotionally can move on with my next expedition. The chances we got for polar bears was just like an amuse bouche. It was a taste. It was just something to dangle it in front of our face and say, well, here it is, but you cannot have it. So the excitement on the ship was palatable. It was exciting. We spotted polar bears on the horizon. Binoculars up, everyone glassing, long lenses out. I was on deck with my 560mm lens. So that's a 400 with a 1.4 teleconverter. Shooting. Clearly visible polar bears. Probably at about 3 kilometers out. 2 of them. Probably a male and a female doing some business. Probably the male following the female. Possibly a male following another male to hunt him away. Although I think the male following a female is much more likely, because when the female eventually lied down on the snow and almost disappeared from our view, the male did the same thing, keeping his distance from the female. And there they stayed until we could no longer stay. We had to go back to Longyearbyen. Our expedition cruise was over. We had flights to return to our homes and our loved ones. I included a little conversation that I had with Virgil, one of our expedition guides, in the video because he's a very big proponent of environmental portraits. This is something that I share. I of course do a lot of close-ups, portraits of wildlife as well, but I myself love the environmental stuff, showing the wildlife in their habitat, in their landscape, in their environment. I think it's the way they should be portrayed because, of course, it's interesting, as Virgil said, seeing the hairs in their nostrils, whatever he said, but it's more interesting to see where they live, where they walk, where they eat, where they sleep, to understand a little bit about their complexity. Of course, we can understand many things from looking at their faces as well, but I do feel and I do think that we learn more about their habits when we look at their habitat. I'm going to show you some images now. So here's the first shot, here's the first photograph that I got, number uno. Beautiful glacier. There's carving glacier stuck here in the sea ice. And over here, the elusive pixel bear. You can hardly even see that it's a freaking polar bear. But I know that it's a polar bear. You see the images just continues. This is so far away that it's incredibly hard to photograph and see anything. Well, there you go. Here's my pixel bear. The other polar bear is somewhere over to the left here, but compositionally I couldn't include them in the same frame. Let's continue rolling through some of these images. The problem we had with the polar bear was that we only had moments as the polar bears were standing up, and then they just lie down on the snow and almost disappeared from our vision. What could we do other than to cherish those moments we had already had? This here is the sharpest image I have of a polar bear. And that's not particularly sharp. This is also after I've used AI noise reduction from Lightroom on it. It's not much. You can see there's a darkening on the snout and you can see the color of the fur, and that's it. Is it game over? Can I use this image? Is everything lost? For me, it's not. I'm going to quickly show how I edited this instead, because I think with images like this that you need to lean into your challenges. Amplify your challenges. Show what light and nature gave you on the day, rather than say, well, you can't actually see it because it's not a sharp polar bear, it's over. Because this here is not the technical mistake from the photographer's side, from my side. This here is atmospherical conditions. I'm at almost 600mm photographing a polar bear approximately 3 kilometers away from where I stood. There's nothing wrong with my shutter speed. There's nothing wrong with my selection of ISO or my selection of aperture. The only thing that is wrong was the fact that we had atmospherical conditions. And we're now going to jump over to the raw file. I think it's interesting. So looking at this raw file, we have a huge amount of mountain above. We got an intensity of light here in the central band, and it kind of tapers off towards near to the camera. So we do have some quite interesting, you can see here that there is an intensity of light close to where the polar bear was. This is the polar bear in the original shape and form, the original image. So I don't like to do any noise reduction on complete raw files. I like to first see what I have to work with, because noise is not necessarily something bad. Sometimes I even add noise to my images in the shape of grain, and if I add grain I can just leave the noise as it was and I don't have to do anything. I am going to crop this ever so slightly, but before I do I just want to show you, if I dehaze the image, that is what the world would have looked like without the atmospherical conditions. You can see the glacier in the background over here, you can see the snow-covered mountainside, and you can see obviously with all that dehaze added we have a black polar bear here. That's obviously not very lifelike. Even adding just a little bit of dehaze makes the background stand out, and that really shows you that we did have atmospherical conditions on the day, and there's actually nothing wrong with the image, and this stuff in the foreground is not sharp by the way either. So we're quickly going to do a little dirty edit on this one. Not dirty, but we're going to do an edit. We start by cropping. This polar bear is small in frame, and I don't want it to be too small in frame. Let's do that. That feels like a crop I can live with. Might not be the same crop as I had before. I am going to clean up this image a little bit. Just the erase tool. I don't like this thing here. I think it distracts showing that glacier. I don't like this little floater. Look here, this is an out of focus bird. Much closer than the polar bear, so let's get rid of that as well. M for a linear filter, shift to keep it horizontal. I'm going to drag that in, give that a touch of darkness, and then I'm going to slide it out. I want to have an ever so slight horizontal vignette here from the bottom, just to anchor the image in. Highlights down, there's not many. Whites a little bit up, not too much. Shadows up or down? I would say up. We have an unsharp image, atmospherical conditions, nothing is sharp. We want to enhance that. We don't want to create high contrast out of that, because that's going to fall apart. We want to create a low contrast, high key image, at least high highlight image, that kind of jives well with the soft nature. Clarity ever so slightly negative, maybe a touch of vibrancy. We're going to have a quick look at the white balance. Let's start at 5600. So 5.9. Oh, it's too warm actually. Now I look at it second time. And I know from experience that the built-in screen on this Mac is a little bit too saturated and warm anyway. That looks good. Let's have a look at the tint. Green, magenta. The image sits there, +16. Okay, so as a basic now I'm happy with this. I definitely want to increase the saturation of the polar bear yellow. So let's do a mask, select object. Let's see. Yep, polar bear selected. Let's increase exposure. Not that much. Increasing exposure makes it harder to see it. We're going to try with the hue. And bring it into the yellows, but that's too much. That looks so fake. Okay, let's try that. And now we are gonna decrease how much. There we go. I think that looks like a polar bear. Let's turn this mask on and off. Off, on, off, on. That looks like polar bear color to me. Much better. Gonna head down to the HSL, the color mixer, and we're gonna remove my, guess what, the blues. Let's see. I want to keep some blues because this whole is an overcast day, right? I just want to have a touch less of it. There is a white streak across the screen, or was even in the raw file, remember? There's a lightness going across the foreground. So with that here in the frame, I now want to amplify that, create new mask, a brush. I could have hit K as well. We're gonna make this smaller. Feather is at 100, size is fine, flow is at 100, that we cannot have, let's put the flow at 16. Let's just... So I did one click here and shift, and then one click here, which basically gives us a line. So if I were to bring exposure up, you see the line popping out. We're gonna start with that, and ever so slightly. Now we're gonna drag one, and this I'm gonna paint myself, because I don't want this to be completely linear. Okay, so undo that one. This is obviously a lot easier to do when you have a real mouse and not a screen. that runs out. Let's look at the exposure and bring that down now that we saw it. Bring it back to 0, no impact. Let's bring the amount down. Do you believe it? Yes, I believe it. I can hardly see it. That means it's perfect. So it's all about these small edits on an image like this. I'm gonna pop in a radial gradient. Okay, zoom out. I'm gonna put it there and make it big. Now we're gonna zoom in and we're gonna find the bear. And we're only gonna highlight the bear. I'm gonna invert this gradient zoom out so we can see it. I'm gonna put some negative exposure. I can, obviously, this is what I want to achieve, right? A huge vignette, but obviously not to that degree. We're talking minuscule edits here, okay? Now though, as I look at the image, because of the vignette, because of what we have done, we've lost a lot of the light in the image. So I think we need to just ever so slightly give it a kiss of light. This here is now the image that we're looking at. Polar bear in the majestic landscape. Zooming in to 100%, or even let's go for 200%. Obviously the image falls apart, the bear falls apart. But the question is that a problem? If I were to post this image to Instagram, surely this is sharp enough. If I were to print this, is it sharp enough? Yes, it is. So I have an imperfect image of a polar bear, blurry, atmospherical conditions, soft, but I can still make good use of this image. I think that people today in our modern world with amazing cameras are obsessed with sharpness. We do not need to be. Of course, this comes already pre-sharpened by Lightroom with their basic settings. Let's instead try to add a little bit of grain. Grain, a little bit goes a long way. You see, if I go something like this, we see less of the bear. Obviously, the goal is not to see less of it. The goal is to give structure to that, which we're already seeing. And I think already at a level of around 8, 10, we do that. By adding that, we're masking some of the digital feel of the noise that came from the photo and adding some grain, which a more analog feel. And with that, dear friends, we have rescued an incredibly blurry, boring, bad photo of a poor little polar bear walking on the snow, and we've turned it into something we can use and be proud of. I'm not dissatisfied with this image. I'm actually rather pleased. To give you an example of what I wish I had caught from 2023, here we have a lovely polar bear couple, obviously a lot closer to the camera. Still not, this is at 400% I think, still not perfectly visible, but visible enough that you can see that this here, probably the female by the looks of her, is colored, and they're tracking her for science purposes. Huge backdrop, drama, environmental portraits, and its full glory in my view. A photo that I'm incredibly proud of. Would I say that my photo from this year was as good as this? No, it is not. But it still represents an image that I'm proud of. And with that, guys, I'm here in Svalbard. I gotta go. I got a polar plunge, or swimming down in the harbor, call it what you want, happening in half an hour. I need to get ready. And tomorrow, together with Simon D'Entremont and Thomas Heaton and a group of lovely people, we set sail. And we have 10 days out on the ocean together. It's going to be a spectacular adventure. And I can't wait to get going. So with that, guys, thank you for watching. As ever, I appreciate you. And I'll see you another time.